There is no perfect diet. This can be obvious to some people, maybe not obvious to others, probably my younger self. I've been into nutrition for like 6 years now, just super into it and researching on my own time, yada yada, listening to all these people talk about it. And yes, there are a bunch of camps like keto, like carnivore, low carb, low fat, just being in a calorie deficit, whole foods. And I've, stuck to many of those at certain points. Um, but in totality, with all of the humans on the planet, there is no perfect diet, and it's pretty easy to figure this out. If you just look at, the fact that as humans, we've grown up evolutionarily in many different places and with many different diets. If you look at all around the world in blue zones, places where people commonly live over 100, or there's very, very low prevalence of modern diseases such as cardiovascular disease, um, depression, etc., diabetes. There's a wide variety of diets. They could be eating just nuts and seeds, scavenging. They could be eating only meats or only fish and milk. They could be eating only, starchy vegetables and greens. And so there's a whole wide array of how different people who have grown up for hundreds of thousands of years from different parts of the world, they have developed different tolerances to different foods over those times. And the human body is so capable of adapting. Even people are able to kind of change their diet when it's not necessarily their evolutionarily apt diet. But other than that, you probably want to, stay where your evolutionary diet works. But, with people mating from all different places, it's not that simple. And so a lot of the times you have to experiment yourself and figure out what works for your body and what makes you feel the best, which is why nutrition is such a tricky subject like that. Another thing that maybe people have heard a lot but haven't before is that, the perfect diet is the one that you can stick to. Um, you know, Whatever diet it is, if you can't stick to it, you come up with a plan, but you can't actually do it, then it's not as great. There are studies where both low fat and low carb diets lead to the same amount of weight change. That's only weight. There's no metrics on like feelings of well-being, etc. But there was also no metrics on which one was easier to do and stick with. And so when I think about myself and my diet, I'm starting to more and more think about, what is easier for me. And diets change very much based on other factors. So me, for a long time, I thought that, keto was very important. Not necessarily high fat, but low carb, because I wanted to, help my skin, and not be as inflamed. Also, I've thought the carnivore diet, not the carnivore diet, maybe like an animal-based diet was really good with, just meats and fruit, what we've eaten, quote unquote, evolutionarily, um, which is not entirely true because we've eaten, vegetables and seeds and all these things a lot before. But now I'm realizing that carbs is something that I very much need in my diet as I'm trying to lose weight right now. I need to supply myself with carbs before, during, after my workouts, and especially throughout the rest of the day so that my body can properly recover from all of that exercise. I won't be able to perform as hard as I want to in the gym or playing soccer, um, if I don't fuel myself with those carbohydrates. And in the past, I thought that always had to be fruit. Now I'm realizing and getting more into the fact that that can be potatoes, that can be, brown rice, maybe even white rice, depending on how, physically active I am, or very well sourced pasta. Getting those more complex and easier to digest carbohydrates instead of just fruit with the fructose, um, or like sweet potatoes where it's very much a lot of fiber. And that's where the potatoes, rice, and pasta can come in for me. And that's something that I'm learning more about. And I haven't necessarily completely tried yet. I've done some with, brown rice and more potatoes, and it seems to be working pretty well, not really affecting my skin much. But I have to continue to experiment with, more brown rice and pasta to see if that works for me. Omega-3 pills are really good for your skin, etc. But that's one of the main things I want to talk about today, which was, there is no perfect diet, and the perfect diet is the one that you can stick to. And over time, as you kind of experiment, you'll be able to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And I've done a lot of experimenting. One thing that I would recommend to people is that when they do experiments on themselves, they keep a sort of personal guide or a personal notebook or like meta-analysis of themselves where they write down, the experiments that they've done and what the outcomes were and how they felt about it. You know, I've done a lot of experiments with fasting, different types of fasting, different types of eating, whether it's low carb, high carb, um, you know, only fruit, eating at different times of the day. And so if you like, especially at the beginning of when you do all this, it's really good to experiment. You learn more about yourself and what you like. And I still even experiment now to today. But what I wish I did was write down the experiments that I did, like before I did them, and then kind of during how I felt, and then after like the outcomes of it, so that I kind of have that personal guide for myself because I've probably forgotten a lot of the experiments that I've done and the outcomes and especially how I felt. Because I, I can always think like, oh, if I just, fast for 1 or 2 days, like I lose this much calories or whatever. But I don't realize that I rebound a lot or I eat more the next day or I felt absolutely terrible for those 2 days. And so I wish I kept a guide, which I'm going to probably start now and write down, what I like, my assumptions about what work, and then like some experiments that I continue to do in the future and the outcomes of those. Because I've done a lot and I've probably forgotten a lot about what I've done. And so I'm going to have to kind of redo those experiments. Of course, I have some of the like knowledge in my head, but I don't remember anything. And I wish I wrote down, I don't remember everything. So I wish I wrote down the stuff that I did. So that is the second part of this video. First, there's no perfect diet. Second, I would experiment and write things down. Keep like a really solid journal, whether it's you want it to be in your notes on your phone, whether on a physical paper or on like a Google Doc, whatever you want. I think that's super cool. Next is from a coaching perspective, which is what I'm really focusing on now, becoming a better coach and helping people with nutrition, which also helps me, is that a very big portion is not about food. It's more about the person. Like most people know what to do. Like they know how to cook and they know what foods they want to eat, but they don't do it. It's not a question of how, it's a question of, you know, when or just doing it. Like what shows how proficient someone is with their nutrition or with their health or lifestyle in general is about how consistent they are with their daily habits. You could be a neuroscience in, how you could be a neuroscientist in how nutrition affects the brain and the body, but if you're not, you know, eating well, then you're not proficient at nutritional knowledge. But if you are someone who really has all the nutrition fundamentals down, getting your protein in, eating a good amount of, vegetable, eating the appropriate amount of carbs for you and fats, getting good sleep, getting some exercise in, eating mindfully, all these things. And if you do that consistently every single day, that's when you are kind of proficient. Um, and so as a coach, it is my job to really understand my clients and help them. They know what to do sometimes. There's a lot of things that they don't know that I do know as their coach, but they know the basics, and the basics is really what you need to do. Um, like my last video, I said the basics are the basics are the entire pyramid, not just the foundation. And so if they know pretty much most of the basics, maybe not the intricacies within that, but most of the basics, it's about finding ways to connect with them, empathize with them, and realize what's affecting them so that they can, you know, be able to slowly build up to those good habits and doing them consistently. Some of the biggest reasons why people can't stick with diets or diet properly or lose weight or do what they want to do with their health is not because they don't know how to do it. It's because, they stress eat or have anxiety or they eat too quickly or they don't plan, things like this. So as a coach, I need to help them with a lot of that mindset stuff. And through my coaching calls, what I want to be doing with my clients is really focusing a lot more on the client and the person rather than on the food choices. I've made that mistake way too much in the past where I talk only about the food choices. Oh, you just got to switch up this way you eat. You got to switch that out. It's not like that. It's a lot more about how the client thinks about it, um, like how they feel about it. And because that's what ultimately leads to the actions that they take and making sure to give them dumbed down super small actions that they can nail out of the park every single day of the week so that they can build upon these habits incrementally step by step without giving things too over the top, which I've known about in the past, but I now realize that those steps are much, much smaller for people that I should be giving people than I initially thought. There's a crazy stat. It is about 60 to 70% of people that are obese, very obese actually, 60 to 70% of people with a BMI above 40 think that they have above average nutrition knowledge. So the fat people think that they have above average nutrition knowledge. And so, knowledge is not what gets you to the results, it's the consistent daily actions. And so that's the third biggest point of this video. And then the last point that I want to talk about is that I've learned about recently is eating mindfully. I want to, um, I've, my brother has gone into religion a lot recently. My family grew up Catholic. We didn't really go to church often, maybe once or twice a year. I feel like all kids, I definitely went through like an atheistic period in my teens where, I thought, how could God be real? Yada, yada. But it was just as you go through life, you start to see more, understand more. And I'm not entirely sure where I am on my journey in spirituality or religion right now. I would say I definitely believe in, a higher power or a God. And I want to pray to that God, even if that God isn't real. I think the idea of it being real is helpful for society and for humans. Looking to kind of this third person that you have a personal, intimate relationship with and can speak to and who loves you no matter what. It's like a permanent father figure. I think that's a very beneficial thing for people and a relationship that they can have, even if it's just within their own head, even if it's not actually true. It is true in your own head if you're having that relationship. And so, one of the big things I like to do at meals is I like to pray before my meals. I like to, you know, thank God for the food and for how it's going to heal my body, build my body, function my body, allow me to live. I like to, thank the animals who have given their lives and transferred their energy to me. And I just like to, thank God again for the wonderful life that He's created and that all the people we have in this life, all my friends and family that I get to live with, and the great life that I have, and just really ground myself in that gratitude every single day, especially around meals. I think it's a good time. Um, and I like to do that. However, I get, self anxious about it, doing it in public, etc., with I'm with friends, or it's not something I'll say out loud. I'll kind of just do it in my head and sit there before my meals. And it's even tempting to just start eating my food. And so these are things that I have to work on, and my clients definitely have to work on these things as well. Not necessarily like all my clients won't be religious or spiritual, but eating mindfully, I believe, is a very big thing. I tend to eat very fast, and my family tends to eat very fast. My brother, my dad, um, and I think that can have some negative downsides. Obviously, physically, if you want to talk about it through like insulin, etc., eating your food slower is probably better in that sense, feeling less bloated. But the main thing is kind of really just feeling the food that you're eating, smelling it, the texture, not being distracted by other things. I tend to, um, if I'm eating, I'm either eating with friends and family, or I'm probably watching some YouTube video or scrolling the news or TikTok, right? And so it's not exactly mindful eating. I'm not really, I barely, sometimes I think back and I'm like, I barely even recognize what I was eating. Like, sure, I tasted it in the moment, but I can't, effectively remember like how it tasted, etc. And I'm kind of focusing on something else. So something I want to do in the future, hopefully near future, is kind of have some times where I'm really mindful about what I'm eating. Obviously praying before I eat and then taking, bites and putting my fork down and, really chewing and smelling and feeling, tasting my food and, taking a couple breaths in between my bites and then going back and repeating that process over and over and over. Really sit in the moment, not be watching something, focus on just the food and the sensations that I'm getting. And I think that would help me a lot better with feeling full and knowing when to stop eating. I do track a lot of my food. It is hard at school sometimes, but with all the oils they add in. But even with tracking my food, like I probably overeat sometimes. Um, and I think being mindful could really help with that. And I think it can also help a lot of other people if, because a lot of people watch things or do other things while they eat, which causes them to lose touch with how they feel, both the food and internally with how full you are or how hungry you are. And so I think being a lot more mindful can not only ground you and really put you in the moment, but also lead to you just understanding when you're full, getting more connected with your body, and losing weight in that sense because you're understanding when you're truly full. So that's the fourth point of this video that I want to talk about, and something that I need to work on, and something I think I will help my clients work on as well if I can effectively do it for myself. So to recap, there is no best diet. The best diet is the one that you can stick to because of how we are evolutionarily. You should very much experiment and write down those experiments. Have it be like your own personal guide. Three is that it's not that people don't know what to do, it's that they don't do it consistently. So, the basics are all you need. Just do them consistently. A lot harder said than done. So build up very, very slowly. Make sure that you know that it's a 1 or 2 out of 10 difficulty for you to do it every single day of the week oh to take up that habit and then build from there week on week. And then last but not least is eat mindfully and really sit in the moment and taste your food and connect more with your body and nature and God. And so thank you for watching.